Hello.
What's up? How you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing excellently. How are you doing this fine day? Where in the world are you? Vaguely.
Uh, I'm in Vancouver.
Oh, nice. How's Vancouver doing?
It's good. It's quite sunny today. You sometimes it can like I don't know why it's been really weird, but lately it's been snowing, even though it's not usually supposed to snow at this time. I don't know where you're at, but how's the weather?
I'm over in Seattle, and I think I haven't left the house today. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, I'm guessing the weather should be the same. We're like an hour from each other.
Y-
But yeah, thank you very
Oh
much
shit,
for
that's right. You're only like a little bit north of me. That's right. I completely forgot. Our weather should be the same.
yeah. Thank you very much for having this conversation. I've had even though I'm a progressive person, but I've been having a hard time finding progressive people to talk to. So I'm really excited to get to talk to you.
Oh yeah, the pleasure's mine. Um, I have a terrible memory. You're gonna have to remind me. What exactly are we talking about today? Also, introduce yourself. Everyone says hi.
So yeah, hello everybody. My name is Vikram. My YouTube channel is Vikslife, Vikslife. I do more reaction content around dating, and I basically take a look at what content creators online say when it comes to dating. I see where I agree with them on or not. When I was younger, I used to be really into pickup artist stuff. As I grow up, I've kind of because I used to be more conservative growing up, but my views have kind of shifted a bit. But I still see myself within that space. But uh, I guess I'm more left wing compared to the rest of the whole space. But yeah, still
Yeah,
I
the
try to be
space I
different.
think is generally pretty right leaning, as I've heard in the past. I've heard rumors of this. Um, no, I'm happy to hear it. And and what did you have in your mind? What do you want to talk about this fine day?
Yeah, so I was going through some of your videos, and I just had a few questions to ask you as it relates to some stuff you said about like pickup artists. Um, so you had a video where you went through this. There's this like I think it's like a dating coach or something. He had like a seminar when I think Andrew Callahan, the Channel 5 dude, went over there to like interview them or something. I
Yes,
don't
I
know if you
remember that.
yeah. One issue that I have with I guess one disagreement that I have with what you said was that you basically said that pickup artists promote toxic and manipulative behaviors. You say that they teach men to manipulate and objectify women using tactics that are often disrespectful, coercive, and even abusive. Um, I want to know what tactics were you referring to?
Um, yeah, my experience with the pickup artist community has been like overwhelmingly negative. I don't know if I've ever interacted with anybody from the community who wasn't at least kind of like openly chauvinistic. Most of the pickup artist tips that I hear about and the kinds of people who are lionized in those spaces seem to be like all about treating dating like highly gamified. They insist on innate differences between men and women, and the best way to get ahead in an unfair dating space for men is to kind of like exploit psychological vulnerabilities in women. Um, I know it's not entirely that, but it often feels like it's mostly that. That's definitely the experience I've had.
Yeah. Don't you think that's more of the red pill stuff, though?
Well, there is a pretty big overlap between the red
Yeah.
pill ideology and pickup artistry. I know there are subsets of the pickup artist community that are kind of like a little more pragmatic and a bit outside of that, but you gotta admit, like you said it yourself, you're more left leaning than the majority of the space. The majority of the space is definitely like pretty well captured by like the Andrew Tate kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew Tate, by what I know, he started as a pickup artist, but he's kind of anti that stuff now because he's found his own like red pill niche. But yeah, I see your point, but I feel like again, I'll just bring it to my personal experience. When I think back to 16-year-old me who like was like who had like a lot of like social anxiety issues, he didn't know like how to talk to women or even to people in general, who like sometimes even being in social situations would give me like panic attacks, and I just didn't know what I was doing. Finding a space online that taught me how to open a girl who I see in public, what to say to start the interaction, how to be shut, how to check for interest, how to check for comfort, how to build more comfort, how to eventually bring a girl back to your place. Stuff like that, I feel like was quite helpful to teach me the basic social interactions, like the skills. And I don't see what's wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with those things in principle. I just think that in practice, like you have to think about the kind of demographic we're talking about here. a lot of young guys who are insecure around women, like this is like a major thing in their heads, right? This is like it weighs heavily on their minds and their personalities. And usually they're looking for an out to those feelings. But people who are having negative feelings usually want someone to blame, right? Like we see this all the time when it comes to any kind of fear, insecurity, disgust, any inconsistency in a person's like mental well-being. You want like something to put that on. And there's like this whole like cottage industry of people online who are ready and willing to make this all about like feminism. Well, why is it so difficult to talk to women? Well, actually, it's because of hypergamy. Feminism has overvalued women's sexual marketplace worth. And as a product of that, like men are at a disadvantage, which causes like the average man is like not capable of like meeting a woman of the average, like relatively average attractiveness. And it's this like this whole social analysis that ultimately comes down to anti-feminism and misogyny. And I think that there's nothing wrong with teaching social skills, but oftentimes, like, it does get accompanied with a lot of really bad political stuff.
Yeah, the one point I do agree with was that when I realized that a lot of people in that space were anti-feminism, I thought it was kind of weird. But I guess some would say that they are against the more like radical feminist movements, right? The more like this part within feminism that's more anti-men. But I don't know if they disapprove of more intersectional types. Even though they might not understand what intersectionality is, but the applications of it, I don't think they'd be against that.
Well, I've had those conversations before where I'm like, "Hey, did you know that actually feminism like also concerns men's issues? And did you know that like you can address these issues with this framework?" But I've never really had much success with that because it feels like oftentimes the anti-feminism is kind of the point, right? Like I don't know, like if you can imagine like your average Andrew Tate fan who's screeching about how men need to keep women in their place or whatever. I don't think you could go up to them and go like, "Hey, did you know that like all these issues would be addressed by feminism?" And they'd be like, "Oh, okay, I didn't realize that." I think they're a bit further down the hate path. Like there's another justification for why they are acting the way they are.
The thing is, like, when we think of Andrew Tate, his whole popularity came from the fact that, so it's like he had the way his, I guess, his marketing model worked was that he created outrage by saying misogynistic stuff and pushing that, like, because it's like, if you say something outrageous, people are going to share you around to insult you, and the more people share you around, the more people see your stuff, and but then when he pulled in people through self-development advice talking about the importance of working out, working on your finances, improving your looks, money, status to get girls, and all that stuff is more like self-development like stuff, which I think was quite good. But the problem with him was more like it's like the misogynistic stuff that he pushed on the side. And I used to
Well,
defend.
the misogynistic stuff isn't on the side. The misogynistic stuff is the main point. Like I've seen a lot of Tate. The misogyny isn't like a little side thing that gets in the way of his like broader advocacy for self-improvement. The self-improvement is like a minor dust coating that gets applied to a gigantic brick of misogyny. Like that's the main thing that he talks about.
Yeah, in the maybe up until 2 weeks ago, I would have disagreed with you, but I've just had like I don't know. The more I see of him, the less I like him. The more I develop like a hatred of him, even. But hmm. No, when it relates to dating advice, like if a guy does not go for pickup party sources, how else would he learn how to open and how to start an interaction with a girl? How to be flirty? How to maintain like a good eye contact, body language, vocal variety? How else would they learn that if not from pickup party sources?
Well, I guess it depends on what you mean by pickup artist, because even I've given advice to my audience on how to flirt with people. But most of my advice is predicated on the idea that fundamentally talking to like a woman to pick them up or like flirt with them isn't really different from just talking to guys to have a casual conversation. That fundamentally everything is just about the basic principles of conversation, understanding what topics people are interested in, how to hold their attention. But there's nothing really special about flirting or sexuality or dating. It's really just kind of more friendship. It's just more of like the basic social expectations that are formed elsewhere. And I don't like the idea that there's this like categorical distinction. Of course, flirting, like how to flirt specifically, that's like obviously like you don't go down to, the barber shop and like flirt with your barber like a 55-year-old guy while he's cutting your hair. Of course, there's like kind of a categorical distinction there. But I think most of it is just like friendship skills.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree because think of this, like how many guys have a lot of women friends that they are just friend zone with. These guys probably are really good at making friends, but just because you have the right social skills to make friends, that doesn't mean it's going to carry over to dating, right?
Yeah, but the goal of getting good at communication is like expressing what you want, right? So if you have a bunch of women who are your friends, but you want to be more than friends with them, you're kind of failing to indicate that to them. I think like the idea with a friendship or with a relationship you're trying to build or anything like that, I think like you have to learn to be forthcoming and not just kind of take the safe route of passively agreeing to whatever you think they're into at the moment. But that's like universal, right? It's not just when you're trying to date somebody. Also, a lot of these guys, like, are they really friends with the chicks? I don't know. I think a lot of women like they're really willing to jump into being friends with a guy because like women have no male friends sometimes because like a ton of guys are just trying to get in their pants. So when a woman thinks they might have an actual guy friend, they're like, "Oh my god, finally, I can just fucking be normal with a guy," you know? And then it turns out that guy also just wanted to get in their pants. He just took longer to get to that. And I think that, it's kind of a fucked situation on both ends.
Yeah, but though I feel like the pickup artist has an answer to that, right? Like they'd say, there's people you'll be friends with, you engage with them normally in your day to day, whether you meet them in class and like events, clubs you're in, or like work or whatever. But on the other side, you when you go to approach a girl, you indicate you show like interest right away. You're clear, or like maybe you'll open her by letting her know you think she's cute. Maybe you'll give her a compliment that kind of indicates that you're interested in her, and then you gauge if she's interested in you back, and then you start the interaction that way. This way, there's no like it's not like oh, I became friends with you to try to get in your pants later on. Well, the approach that you give, I feel like unless the girl makes the move first, you might just like end up being friends with everyone.
Well, I don't. I think the friend zone thing is always like a communication failure. If you're just friends
Yeah.
with a girl, but you want to be more than friends, like you can always just say that to her. Whether it works out well or not. Obviously, you want to be straightforward with what you want. I guess maybe this is like the categorical distinction thing that really bugs me with a lot of pickup artistry. It's that if you say like indicate interest to a girl by going up to her and complimenting her, like at a bar or something. And if I'm at a social event and I want to just talk to a group of people, I'll also go up and compliment them. Like if there's a guy, like any guy, like I'm at my university graduation like ceremony, or I'm at the dinner afterwards, and there's like a faculty guy who's like twice my age, and go up and say like, hey, nice tie, you're looking good, whatever. It doesn't feel that different to me. It just feels like people build up these expectations because they think like, okay, well, women are different. You have to treat them different. And I think that's what makes a lot of guys really anxious when they talk to women.
Sorry, I was thinking for a sec.
No, no, no.
Yeah, I do agree with the part about like I disagree with a lot of people who are more into that space when it comes to how they treat women. Like I do see there are differences between men and women, but I think the differences are probably more social than biological. There are biological differences too, but it's not as significant as they'll make it out to be. But um I don't know, because it's. I think you and I might just have like a different. Because especially for you, as you're like a semi-celebrity, so it might just be a bit different. Because even for you, I've seen a video where you talked about how you're direct right away with the girls, right? Or guy girls again.
Yeah, if I think somebody is cute, I try to tell them that pretty upfront. I'm not normal. I don't normally like bury the lead.
Yeah. But doesn't that just maybe I misunderstood? But doesn't that kind of go against what you said just earlier?
Well, it's just about like what my intentions are with a person. If I want to flirt with somebody, and I'm into guys too, so it's pretty like
Mhm.
ubiquitous with everyone that I talk to. But if I'm interested in somebody, like I'll go up and I'll say that. And if I'm not romantically or sexually interested in somebody, I'll usually just go up and say whatever else I'm thinking. But I'm always just saying what I'm thinking. I don't really think of it differently. I don't think like, okay, those seem like cool people that I want to talk to, but those seem like cool people I want to flirt with. So that's like a different thing. It's just in both cases, going up and just saying what's on your mind. And keep in mind, like I know there are like pickup artist guys who talk about that, and that's good. Like I agree with that. I'm not opposed to any of that. I just I wonder how much anxiety guys experience is like a product of this built up feeling that women are this like distinct creature that has to be treated in a different way. There are guys who are fine talking to other guys. The moment they talk to a girl, they get all nervous and self conscious, and I don't know why. Like I genuinely don't get why. I can kind of sympathize with their perspective, but I've never felt that way.
Hmm. I think it comes from it's another argument I was going to bring up later, but I can just bring it up now. So it relates to what you're saying here. But when you brought up that pickup artists teach that your words, not mine, bitches ain't shit, and they try to drill it to you, and your words, not mine, you know. But no, I do think there's like a good message behind this because when if I'm talking to a guy who never gets laid, this
Mhm.
guy doesn't know how to talk to girls. This guy's like a like generally like struggle in social situation. It's normal that that guy will put women on like a pedestal, you know, like will put women in like this weird creature that he doesn't know how to access just because he doesn't have the experience. He hasn't talked to enough women to know. But I would say then the solution would be maybe to get that guy like a good online dating profile, teach that guy how to talk to girls, get him the social experience to know, to start like to have enough like real life experience to be able to see women as equal to him, like on the same like human level, you know?
Yeah, I think my advice is usually like the best way to do this is to have a female friend, and not like a female friend you secretly want to date or fuck, and you're just like being friends with them to get on their good side before proposing the question, but like an actual female friend, because there's like in the dating ritual, you know, in the interactions that men and women have, like say you're picking up women at a bar, right? There is like a ton of weird, arbitrary social bullshit that gets in between people and being forthcoming in that environment. There's like the expectation the guy has to be suave and he has to be the one who approaches, and the woman has to be coquettish and like not super direct because she doesn't want to come across too easy, and also the woman might fear violence from the man, and the man doesn't, and like the man doesn't want to be creepy, and there's so much there, right? And I feel like it builds up the idea that like there's this impassable gap in between men and women. But if you're like friends with a woman for long enough, they just act like a regular person, you know? Like if you can see this especially online because you can talk to people without hearing their voice or looking them in the eye. And if you're friends with a woman online and you just like the username is whatever, it's just like talking to anyone else. There's not actually a difference between having a friend that's male or female. They're the same. So I think if more people realize that and kind of really I don't know, internalize the fact that there isn't actually that line, it'd be a lot easier for them to work around it, you know? Because dating profiles, especially, man, like a Tinder or whatever, Tinder fucking sucks. Especially if you already have like weird attitudes towards women, because you're gonna get like one match for every 1,000 swipes right you do, in most places, unless you're gorgeous. So it probably makes people feel a lot worse, you know?
Yeah, just give me a second to think. Hmm. With when yeah, when it comes to online dating profiles, at least for me, like I had like a really bad online dating profile, so I wasn't getting results at all. And you know who Alex of Playing with Fire is?
Yes, I've talked to him.
Yeah, Alex fixed my online dating profile. And now, like that's basically how I get girls nowadays. Just like, but regarding the friends, regarding the argument about if men had more women friends, they wouldn't be that weird. I don't know if that's true because think of like there's a trope of a male feminist who's super creepy. This is not representative of all feminist women, of course, but like the very much that stereotype.
Yeah.
Those are guys who probably hang out with women a lot, right? Those are guys who know about women's issues, who are all aware, yet they are really creepy.
Um. Yeah, that definitely happens a lot for sure. I mean like,
Does it?
well, like the yeah, I think we have a lot of unfair standards about what we call guys creepy for, right? You know the jokes about like, how to not be called creepy, be handsome, don't be ugly, that kind of thing. Like that's kind of true. If you're hot, you can get away with a lot more. Um, Obviously, online profiles exacerbate that because you don't actually get to, I don't know, experience a person's humanity when you're talking to them. They're just like some text and a screen and some photos. So it's really easy to go like, ah, of course. Well, he typed that while he was in his, his mother's basement, and he was coated in dried semen from the last 8 masturbation sessions he had before he showered. It's like, and like all this is bullshit you make up, but people do that. Like everyone does that. People just make shit up in their head. Um, it's really unfortunate. I think that Tinder exacerbates a lot of these problems, like dating apps in general. It's a lot easier if you're gay or even like gay coded. Like if you're in the queer community or even like an ally of it, I think things are a lot easier because queer people tend to be a lot sluttier and a lot less um concerned with social etiquette. But I can imagine that if you're just like a straight guy, that shit has to be hellish.
Yeah, for some reason, it reminded me of like this TikTok I saw where like it's like this girl was like showing my boobs to my gay best friend, and the guy like she gets behind the camera, shows her boobs to the guy, then the guy looks at the camera, smiles, and then the music kind of changes. Like then the punchline is like, oh, he's straight, he pretended to be gay to see the
Well,
the
the double
her.
punchline is she probably knows. Um, it's yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's also like some weird like homophobia that some women treat gay guys with, the idea that they're basically women. I don't know. It's just this frankly, the whole system kind of fucking sucks, you know? I think the most that you can do in an environment like this is just try to go out and try to make friends. Um okay, wait, I'll say it like this, okay? Have you ever tried getting a job online, like filling out those stupid resumes and like the forms and like what would how slavishly would you lick the boots of your manager at this location, like that bullshit?
Oh yeah, like I was like, why do you want to work at this company? Oh my God, I'm in love with the values and all that bullshit,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's miserable and it's degrading, it's dehumanizing, and it rarely works, right? Because like every position gets 5,000 applications sent, so you rarely ever hear back from them. Whereas it used to be the main way people got jobs was through references. Like if you had a family friend and they would just like, oh yeah, my company has an open position. I heard your son Jimmy just got out of college. Does he want a position? And then like that was how most people got their jobs. I also think that's how most people used to get their relationships. They would just meet people through shared friend groups. They would go to social events and just bump into people and talk and, kind of naturally commingle. And much like how a lot of people are doing this online job application bullshit, we're doing a lot of online relationship application bullshit too. And I think it's also kind of really fucking bad. So I think the best thing you can do is try to rebuild those social networks. Like go out there, make friends, talk to people, and hey, maybe it'll work out.
Yeah. I have to like I don't know if I agree, but it's I have to think more about like about this. You brought up some takes that I haven't really like thought deeply about, but so I'll put that aside for now. Um, Another disagreement that I had with you is that I get the impression that you're more on the black pill side. Like black pillars will say that looks matter way more than game. I get the impression that you tend to agree with that.
No, I think gay matters a lot. Um, I mean, obviously looks do matter a lot, but I don't think it's impossible for anyone. I mean, maybe there's some like I don't know, 4 foot tall like burn victim or whatever. But I know plenty of people who aren't really that conventionally attractive who are super charismatic and they just don't have any issues, um, getting laid. I think it's a lot easier, or like confidence is way more of a factor than people want to believe that it is. Because if it is confidence, you're kind of responsible for not succeeding to an extent, right? If you believe it's just your looks and it's like, well, your sexual marketplace value is coded into your skeleton, it was decided at birth. Well, then you have like no reason to try because it's all like moot. It was set in stone from the beginning. But if it's charisma, you could always improve. So I think people don't like the idea that there's something they could be doing. That's like an incel thing, right? Like they hate the idea that they could take a shower and get better because they're like, wow, take a shower, great advice. And then it's like, okay, well, a lot of them really haven't taken a shower though, so it actually is good advice for some of them.
Yeah, yeah, no, I agree. There's another part about so in that video where you were reviewing that pickup boot camp or whatever. Um, I agreed with a lot of the stuff you brought up about like the coach. I thought the coach was kind of like a really cringy dude. Um, and I talked to Alex about him, and what Alex told me was that he's a nice guy in private, but he's really cringe. Like even like in private, he's like a really cringe dude. But my only, I guess, a concern I had was that not concern, like a disagreement. Um, I felt like you were unnecessarily mean to the guys he was teaching, because like some of them were like awkwardly trying to talk to girls, and Andrew Callahan like was filming them, and But these were guys who have like really bad social skills who are trying to get better. And it's normal at first when you're trying to talk to people, you're going to be awkward. You're going to say things that are going to come off the wrong way because you don't know what you're doing. And because I remember at first when I tried to like get out of my shell and start talking to more people, I was really awkward too. And it's a normal thing, but I felt like you would make unnecessarily mean comments at them, and I kind of wanted to know why you said those things.
Um, it's been a while since I watched that video with the Andrew Callahan because he's canceled too. If I remember correctly, I think it's kind of like a sympathetic cringe thing. I have a really low opinion of this like pickup artist boot camp shit. So when I see people go for that, like I do kind of feel bad for them because I feel like they're being preyed on a little bit. But at the same time, you have to be kind of down a path to fall into that stuff to begin with. You know what I mean? Especially when it comes to like listening to actual gurus. I don't really have an issue of like, hey, here's watching an online video that can teach you like some basic tips for reading people's social cues. That's okay. But if you're like meeting up with this guy, this was the guy with like the purple mohawk, right? That's the guy we're talking about.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. If you're to a point where you're meeting somebody like this at a convention in person, I feel like you're down a road, like you have packed up for the long haul. You have loaded the station wagon and you are way down the road. And to a point like I can't reserve all of my disdain for the behavior. But obviously I always celebrate people's efforts to improve.
Yeah. But the thing is, I mean, that guy, like, I agree. I'm not gonna defend him. I thought it was really cringe. Um, And I did think though a lot of what he does, even though I'm sure he's sincere, a lot of it is also like a marketing move. Because like if you should look at me being weird, I'm dressed weirdly, my hairstyle is so weird. Yet just using my amazing game, I'm able to get laid a lot. Like he's gonna get clients that way because then these guys who are not as weird as him are gonna think that oh, if this dude is really weird, he's able to get girls, maybe I could too. But in the end, like the behavior that you're showing when it comes to these guys is just guys trying to work on their social skills. This, like, even as cringe as it can be, all of us, I'm sure that even you must have like when you first started going out to be social, not even dating, just like being social, like a social person, you made mistakes, right? Like I've made mistakes, like everyone has. And just because I get the impression that most people they go through these social missteps when they are kids, so as adults we've learned it already. And I think society tends to be unfair towards men who haven't figured out the social skills by the time they become adults.
Yeah, I definitely don't disagree with that, especially since men are the ones who are expected to kind of like initiate. Um, but at the same time, there has to be a limit on like permissibility with the kinds of pickup artist advice that people fall for, right? Like Andrew Tate fans right now are like fourth Reiching their way across social media. So, like I wouldn't extend my charitability to them very much outside of a general like, well, I hope you change kind of thing. Um, as for that particular guy, he's doing like the old peacocking thing. I don't remember the exact thing that his proteges or students or whatever were doing in that video that I mocked, but I imagine there was probably something that I would find like pretty disagreeable at the face of things. I celebrate people's efforts to improve, but we have to be selective about those efforts, right? Because if we just accept like any effort to make guys more charismatic, then you fall for the Tate thing where it's like, like he might be like a sex trafficking rapist who's currently like heading the forefront of the reactionary movement. But, he did tell people to work out, so it all evens out in the end.
Yeah, that was my because initially when I would think of Andrew Tate, I thought of him as like a guy who's like a misogynist, but at least he's teaching guys to work out and take care of themselves and stuff. But then like the more I looked into him, the more I feel less I liked him. It's like
Well, that's the
having
thing.
genuine problems.
Alex from Playing with Fire also defended him, like pretty extensively too on some of his worst comments. And Alex from Playing with Fire was nice to me, and I'm sure he's a nice guy. But Andrew Tate is like the devil. So I worry about the level of charitability that we're offering, like adjacency wise, to pickup artists and their ilk, because we're sympathetic to men who have issues getting a date. Like I am sympathetic to those men, But that doesn't mean that I'm going to be sort of like blanket permissive to everyone who claims they have a solution, because it's a really exploitable market. Insecure guys are basically the bedrock of reactionary movements, because it's almost every reactionary movement at its core has had like a group of men who are fearful that their sexuality or their virility is being challenged by some social or demographic change. Um, which is weird, but it's also the world we live in. And we have to be careful about that stuff. And I try to strike that balance of like sympathy for the problems, but at the same time, like we can't be permissive of every like leech that hops onto that problem, makes a bunch of money off it, selling people bad solutions.
Hmm. I mean, just as I mentioned earlier, just like a separation between. So Andrew Tate is actually he's against the pickup artist stuff. He's like very much like on the red pill side. So he'll say like, "Oh, cold approaching women in public. It's like stuff that like low value men would do. Me as a high value man, like I'm so rich, I'm so such high status, I have such amazing looks that women will reach out to me and do everything like." And he'll brag about how he gets to bang models while pickup artists will bang like your average regular girl. So there's a bit of a difference on that side. But yeah, I don't think I agree with Alex on Tate. I think Alex, his defense of Tate would be that this, even though like he'll call out the sex trafficking and all that wild stuff that Tate does, but he'll bring up that whether you like it or not, he's probably the most popular self-help for men like guy out there. No one else is anywhere near on his level, and we have to take, I guess, the best. It's like even though he's a horrible person, he's what men around the world are looking up to. He's what men around the world seem to need.
Which is pretty, well, that's pretty sad, right? I don't even think he talks about self-help. All of his self-help just seems to be like, all of you are losers. If you weren't losers, you would be a multimillionaire like me, and you could just buy everything you want. He doesn't even really advocate for self-help. He basically just, like, all of his self-help is just him saying he's great, be like me, which isn't really self-help. It's basically just him, like, jerking off onto a crowd of like, adoring teenagers and them thanking him for it, which is pretty weird. Um, but ultimately it's the same like political impulse as any kind of pickup artistry stuff, right? Like it appeals to the same demographic. You have like insecure, sexually unsuccessful guys who are looking for a solution, and you have like the incel black pill route where it's like, okay, well you can't do anything, you might as well just kill yourself, and you have like the pickup artist route where it's like, okay, we'll get really good at talking to bitches, and then you have like the red pill. Men and women are inherently different. You have to play women. You have to play the game to get them. And I don't think any of these are like mutually exclusive. There are tons of black pilled people who like Andrew Tate. There are people who do pickup artistry who like Tate. Tate says red pill stuff, but a lot of his stuff is also pretty black pill, where it's like, yeah, like if you don't look like me, if you're not rich like me, it's over, which is pretty black pill because not many people can be multimillionaires who own 36 cars. So I think it all just blurs together. It's just like male insecurity and whoever can make the most money selling fake solutions to them. And I, again, like I would be more sympathetic to pickup artistry if I'd seen more people who were openly critical of people like Tate, who are, even if you are a pickup artist, like I think the perspective with him would be, oh yeah, Tate is like a monster who pulls people away from good behavior because he gets rich off of selling people bad solutions. But I don't see that criticism because I think a lot of pickup artists know that they share an audience with Tate. So they can't, like if they criticize Tate, a bunch of people in their audience be like, "Whoa, brother, I didn't realize that you were, part of the Matrix." And it's like, it's all part of the same group.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'd say that Alex is probably the closest that I've seen to doing it. Like, he sided with Hassan Piker in that debate. By what I know, he tries to like, he'll take some of the concerns that Tate brings up and pull it back to his pickup artist stuff. But I don't know because I remember when I was a teenager, there was this guy called Elliot Hellis. He was like a strength. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was like he used to teach guys like how to do like strength training stuff and all that. And then he started doing life advice, and he just kind of went crazy. He started believing in God, and he started like pushing like full on like misogyny. Like out of nowhere, he started bringing up that like he doesn't know if women should have the right to vote and some crazy shit. And I don't know why, but for some reason, this is what men all over the world tend to gravitate to.
Well, I think that's because this is like the desperation behavior, right? A lot of men who are sexually unsuccessful. Okay, I guess politics is usually about targeting people where they have very strong feelings and exacerbating those feelings to the point that they'll go along with positions they don't normally agree with. So like the conservative like agenda right now, it's like, okay, if we can get people this angry about trans people, like we can get them to go along with a bunch of economic policies that are objectively bad for them. And with the like pickup artistry stuff, with the Andrew Tate stuff, I think it's like, especially when you're young, being insecure about women is like the number one thing on guys' minds. It's like it dominates their brains. Morning, noon, and night. If a guy feels like he's not getting laid or he'll never get laid, he feels like despair about his relationship prospects. That shit like lives rent free in his brain all the time, you know? Which means it's a really easy vector to target. And you get like the guys who go after that, the guys who can make money off of that. And that's everyone, by the way, including me who talks about these issues. Like anyone who talks about it, we're making money off of it if we have any kind of like business set up around it. But there's a huge overlap with being insecure for these reasons and fearing women. And people tend to hate things that they fear because they're the root of a negative emotion. And I think it's just really easy to slide into that, you know? If you already have a political model that is based entirely around like angry, insecure dudes who are, you know, trying to better themselves and they're looking for someone to blame, it's really easy to direct that and kind of like weaponize that and radicalize people in that way. I'm looking at his YouTube channel, by the way, Elliot Hulse. Elliot Hulse's Strength Camp. I haven't heard of this guy before, but he looks like the type. He's doing like the mean mugging, angry face in all of his videos. 2 million subs. Oh my god. Whew. I should get into this.
Yeah. He used to be like a world champion, like powerlifting dude, if I remember well. But then like he has a second channel where he talks about life advice, and now he's like a Jesse Lee Peterson fan, and like he started, he went like I don't know, he just showed that side of him, and yeah, he just kind of went wild. But um, okay, about masculinity, there's something I kind of wanted to get more of your take on. So, in a video, you talked about how traditional masculinity can be harmful to men and women. You also criticized the idea of traditional masculinity, which you said can be harmful, and all that. Traditional gender roles often encourage men to be emotionally repressed, aggressive, and dominant, which can lead to unhealthy behaviors and attitudes towards women. Do you recognize that there are masculine values that are really good?
Yeah, there are masculine and feminine virtues that are both good, but like a lot of masculine virtues are so-called virtues are really destructive. Um, like they're literally like killing guys, you know. So I push back against those. But if it's stuff like strength or like responsibility or honor, like I get it, those are good, right?
Yeah, I guess we mostly agree. I feel like I don't know if it's hard for me to say like if most masculine values are bad or good or whatever. I feel like, for example, being a leader, whether you're a man or woman, just having that skill of being able to be an independent person who's able to handle difficult situations, being someone who's um, like yeah, having strength, being able to like carry yourself properly and all that. Those are really good values, and vice versa. Like having on the feminine side, being a caring person, like having more, I guess, of an emotional control. Even though I know some people would say that emotional control is not feminine, whatever. I don't know, whatever people determine as well. But um, an issue that I see with progressives sometimes is that when they talk about healthier masculinities, they are talking about feminine values. They don't really like address what masculine values there are that's good.
Yeah, well, there are some that I think are good, and I think a lot of them stand for themselves. I don't consider myself a particularly feminine person, you know. I'm sure if you got like your average PUA or like red pill guy, you'd be like, ah, well, you're gay, so you know. But I think broadly, I'm pretty comfortable with a lot of masculine tendencies. The issue is like there are a couple that really fuck over men. The big ones being emotional unavailability and the idea that being angry is is like a virtuous thing. Like there's something cool or masculine or defining or validating about being angry. Those two things in particular, like kill men. And I mean kill literally, because the emotional unavailability thing is probably the main reason men have higher suicide rates than women, you know? Because like women have a much easier time making friends with each other. It's really easy to open up to women. Like even as a guy. So everyone like wants like a woman um to talk to when it comes to like, oh yeah, I want like some emotional comfort. Like overwhelmingly people choose women. And it's not because they're intrinsically more more like warm or whatever. It's because like they're socialized to be more accepting of emotional expression. Guys aren't.
Yeah, and I know this is something that I've heard it's quite common in with people who have autism, for example. Like women with autism have an easier time because it's not easier. It's not easy, but it's like relatively as it relates to social issues. It's like it might be a bit easier just to the degree that society tends to train women more to fit in socially, while for men it's a lot harder because like society doesn't give you that same degree of training. Um, and this is another issue that I had with you when you made fun of that guy, that cringy PUA dude who had like a piece of paper where he had like specific steps, like you engage with a like compliment and continue with this. Like because initially when I see the scripts that some pickup artist coaches have, I used to kind of cringe a lot at it, and I still kind of do. But I talked to a guy who has autism, and he told me that for him, seeing someone explain it in like step by step was very helpful in understanding, okay, I start an interaction, I say this, if she says this means this and that. And like to people with different degrees of autism, that could be really helpful to have like a script to follow, at least at the beginning until you get it. And I want to know, do you not agree with that?
I don't know. I feel like the scripting stuff makes it more understandable for some people, but I wonder if it's actually good in the long run. I feel like that really scripted attitude towards social engagement encourages people to think of it as a set of challenges to overcome. And I don't know if that's usually the best way to engage with other people. It's like I think maybe it's like a good starting point or a good template or maybe something to kind of keep in mind. But in the long run, I wonder if there's sort of like a negative consequence to reducing social interactions to that kind of formula. I don't like stuff like that. Don't you feel like I mean, don't you feel like it kind of encourages people to think of those engagements in an incorrect way, where you're not just sort of reading how they feel, saying what you feel. Instead, you're going like, okay, step one, got to do this. Step two, all right, I'm looking for this behavior. If I see this, I do this. If I do, I'm not saying everyone can do that like easily and intuitively, but maybe a reliance on that method might be kind of negative in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, for me, because I'm not autistic, I just, I guess I just struggle with anxiety. I guess everyone has their own vices or whatever, if we consider a vice. But, uh, so for me, like, it's not that important, but if I put myself in I have to know, because the only experience I had with like an autistic guy who talked to me about it, he told me that he needs that to help him. So I'm just basing myself on that. I truly, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I guess it's possible that for some people it could be beneficial. I don't know. I'd have to think about it. Again, it's been a while since I've seen the video too, so it's possible that the specific steps that were being, you know, that were being listed there were were less than savory. I don't have anything against like the market of male self improvement. I guess it's just that gets taken into a negative direction so often. You know?
Yeah. We talked about Andrew Tate. We talked about Elliot Hills. There's another guy I want to talk to you about just to get your take on it. It's Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Uh, so personally, I'm not a fan. I think my if I were to talk to him, I would probably tell him like before he gives advice to people to clean his room first. But uh, my problem with him was that uh, outside I guess I understand that people say that he gives good psychology advice, but I guess my religious and political disagreements with him tend to make me see him in a more negative way. But I just wanted to know what you think of him.
I have a pretty negative. So right now, like he's basically been lobotomized. Right now, he's insane. On Twitter, he tweets like not kidding, like 100, 200 times a day in rambling, incoherent, anti-progressive screed. So like, I'm gonna try to like amalgamate Jordan Peterson as a person and not think of him right now because he used to not just do that, which is all he does now. And I don't think his psychology advice is like that helpful. There's some stuff on discipline and self-reliance that I think are good, but I think overall, a lot of his perspective, or a lot of the stuff that he said about men and how to improve your life and so on and so forth, as at best it's been banal and inoffensive. It's not, it's pretty hard to argue with, like the clean your room stuff. People make fun of it, but like, okay, clean your room, like, right, your parents told you that. That's not groundbreaking. It's not wrong to say, I agree with it, but it's not groundbreaking. It's banal. It's inoffensive. And then it's kind of paired in with this really weird like religious morality that ties everything together. um and I think that the broader goal of this is to encourage self-reliance and independence in a way that is actually often quite damaging to your mental health. A good example of this would be, he used to say, well, I think he still would say, do not attempt to change the world until your house is in perfect order. Like, basically, don't try fussing about with how things work until you know for a fact your life is together, because otherwise, how can you even, reasonably say that? Which is hypocritical, A, because he was addicted to benzos at the time, and B, oftentimes people's houses aren't in order because of systemic issues they can only address broadly. But an emphasis on self-reliance, while good, is also one of the main issues that men have, right? Like, self-reliance is a good virtue, but we are literally a social species. Like, everything that we've built as a society has been a product of our ability to cooperate. The idea that self-reliance is some kind of like ultimate virtue of masculinity is a destructive one for men, because it kind of pulls them in the wrong direction. And yeah, I try to push back against that. I think people should live communally and less independently. At least independence in the way it's framed by like people like Jordan Peterson, which I think in reality isn't independence. It's actually a kind of like, hey, keep it together and bottle up your feelings. Don't make your issues other people's issues.
Yeah, about the communal thing, I agree. Like, just when I was a kid, like if my parents were working, I would go to the neighbors, and the neighbors would like, I would like, they would take care of me and stuff, and it was like a more like, there were more community, but nowadays it's not really as big a thing, or maybe it is in some places. But regarding Jordan Peterson's psychology, again, I'm not a psychologist. It's hard for me to know if it's good or not. Uh, I felt like I didn't like the 12 rules for life thing. It didn't feel like, I think two of the rules were like parental rules, and the rest it felt like Jordan Peterson's life was such a mess. I don't know if I could trust his advice on how to fix my own life. But my biggest problem with him was how like he has made it in such a way that people, at least in his space, make it seem like being religious is edgy.
Yeah, like being religious is counterculture. That's actually a big thing happening right now with like Catholic converts especially, where it's like, the mainstream is degenerate, it's liberal, it's atheistic or agnostic, and you can actually be part of the counterculture by pretending to be Catholic. And it's such bullshit. Like, it is never possible. It's impossible for religious indoctrination to be countercultural, because you're submitting yourself to like the most absolute possible authority. You can't, you can never be like a dissident when you're basically saying like, all right, I know the best way to be an edgy independent. I will submit myself to God. Like, it's nonsensical. But people get behind that for the same reason they get behind Andrew Tate, right? Like, it's usually desperate, lonely men who are looking for some kind of mission. The same shit happens with ISIS. Like, people don't get recruited to ISIS after like working 20 years a stable office job in Syria. It's like young people who have been radicalized because they feel like everything they ever had was taken away from them by the West, by Christianity, by imperialism. And likewise, you have all these like, with respect, kind of like loser 18-year-old guys who have never so much as seen a tit in real life. And they're like, yeah, well, society is broken. I will crush liberal degeneracy with the weight of my Orthodox Christianity. I'm signing up. Let's do it. And of course, they're bad Christians when they do this. Like, they don't go to church, but it doesn't matter, right? It's about like the narrative.
Yeah, but I'll play devil's advocate, I guess Jordan's advocate.
Mhm.
Uh, with Sam Harris back then, the reason he lost a lot of fans to Jordan Peterson was that Sam was not able to provide meaning to life in a way that Jordan Peterson was. And as it relates to men, and Jordan Peterson was uniquely placed in such a way as to he was able to identify real struggles that men face, especially like I guess his audience is more white men. So white men who felt like society was being unfair to them, like who were maybe they had their own issues, but then they go to university and they would hear that, oh, you're like among the most privileged guy, like you cis straight white man, or like blah 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 and all that. And Jordan Peterson, he responded to that and told them, no, the actual truth is the other side is the one lying to you. your life, you're struggling and all. I can help you fix your issues. While the other side is lying to you and making it seem like you're privileged and everything should be going well. And I guess I want to know, how would you respond to that?
Well, I think actually Jordan Peterson is correct there, only because Sam Cedar is philosophically illiterate. Sam Cedar
Sam
tried.
Harris.
Oh, sorry, not Sam. Oh my God, I did it again. Not Sam Cedar. I do this all the time. It's the Sam's. Sam. Yeah, Sam Harris, not Sam Cedar. Sam Cedar's great and not philosophically illiterate. Sam. Okay, Sam Harris is though because he tried to cross the Izot gap. The problem with Sam Harris is that his argument for meaning was this like appeal to an objective bridge between ethical normative values and like descriptive values based on what people sort of intuitively like or dislike. You know, if you can imagine a hell and hell is painful, would we not agree everyone would dislike it? If we can agree everyone dislikes it, would we not then say that it is bad to be in hell? And the problem with that is that it's really dumb. Philosophy doesn't work that way. Even if everyone thinks that a thing is bad, that doesn't make it morally wrong. That just means people dislike it. It doesn't cross the Izot gap. You can't cross the Izot gap. Jordan Peterson, however, is religious, so he can appeal towards religious morality, which means that he can root his axioms in a kind of like divine command theory, which I disagree with, but it is consistent. I think that in this respect, Sam Harris really failed to do what he was trying to do, which was provide a concrete grounding for somebody who has lost everything and is trying to build their life back up from scratch. And a lot of people want that, right? Because society is really bad at giving people meaning, especially men. I think that women have been given a couple of narratives on how to like build meaning in their life. They're not consistent and they're not perfect, but we kind of have like this, oh, girl boss, you can have it your way. You can be a career woman or you can have a family. Good luck juggling those two, haha. But it's something, right? Like it's a narrative. But for a lot of guys, it's like there's this really weird, like, okay, you have to be a provider, but, you know, also everyone has a two-income household today anyway, so it's not like you can be the only provider. And like you want to be independent, but like it's not really possible to be a lone warrior cowboy in modern society, so you don't actually get to be that. And you want to be like sexually forward and confident and a leader, but you don't want to be creepy. And most guys who try to be those things are creepy. And it's like there's so much jumbled shit for guys that they don't know how to follow. Jordan Peterson tries to cut through that and give people some meaning. I think he's better at doing that than most, but I still think that he's wrong. And I think he pushes people in a bad direction when he does that.
Yeah, back in the day, like I mean, nowadays, like the few stuff I've seen of him seem like, I don't know what happened to him, but he's gone kind of like, yeah, he's out of his mind now. But um, yeah, Sam Harris, I think that's the biggest criticism people have is that I think the moral landscape is not, doesn't make sense. He doesn't really answer to that. He doesn't have an actual answer. While Jordan Peterson, even though his answer is basically, well, God planned everything for you. But well, I think he goes even like he says that even if you're an atheist, you should act as if God exists, because otherwise a society that's fully godless is a degenerate society to live in or whatever.
Yeah, that's
But
really stupid. The idea that you can't like this is a very common like 4 IQ religious thing where it's like, without God, wouldn't everyone just be murdering and raping each other? Which is obviously not the case. I mean, think about it. There are human pantheons that have had gods that literally celebrate bloodshed, and we still built civilization despite of that. Like if you were a Spartan warrior back in ancient Greece running around killing people, there are plenty of gods in your pantheon who'd be like, yeah, dude, keep that yeah, you're doing great. And in spite of that, they were still the center of civilization and democracy for their time. So it's like, not only do you not need God, you can have pro bad things gods, and people will still find ways to cooperate, develop systems of morality, and work together. Not perfectly, but I just don't think it's that easy.
yeah, there was that edgy atheist meme of like I think Steven Weinberg who said that like good people are good, bad people are bad, but for a good person to do something bad, it requires religion. I probably don't fully agree with that. I'm sure there's like I don't think it's fair, but it just reminded me of that. But yeah, do you see there's something there with Andrew Tate going from atheist to Muslim, Sneeko going from atheist to Muslim, Jordan Peterson going from kind of atheistic to Christian now. Do you think there's something in there that people who give self-help advice for men end up needing religion to push that, and not just religion, there's religion and pushing against societal degeneracy, whatever they mean by that.
I think it's the exact same thing as like the Tradcaf stuff. And none of them are actually Muslim, by the way. Andrew Tate's not Muslim. Sneako's not Muslim. They're doing it for a couple of reasons. One of them is because there's a bunch of reactionary shit happening right now in the West that is being kind of backed and funded by the Saudis. Like there's like no joke. There's a reason why Andrew Tate has like strong ties to the UAE, right, in Dubai. It's not a like these aren't $0 connections. These are business connections. There are like we saw the same thing with the World Cup in Qatar, where there's this weird like the American conservatives have been anti-Muslim for a long time, but then suddenly it's like, oh well, actually, you woke leftists, you're pushing your culture on Muslims when you say they have to allow gay people into the stands or have a gay flag in the logo or whatever. And it's like, oh, okay, weird. There's kind of like a cultural parallel happening right here. I think a lot of it is just like which groups can I appeal to and which like benefactors are paying me money to pretend to be aligned with their groups. But it's the same thing as the Tradcast stuff, right? Like ultimately the goal of these moves are just to push people to the far right. And it's a lot easier to do that when you push the religious aspect as well, because it's easier to form like ultra reactionary, morally concrete worldviews if you're doing so with the perceived like backing of divine right. You know what I mean? Coming down on gay people is a lot more fun when you're doing it from the perspective of a warrior of God than from a random like serial masturbator, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I agree. With I mean, uh, I don't know if Andrew Tate or Sneeko are like not real Muslims. It's hard to know because um, I know that's a problem that I have a lot of like I guess American progressives. It's that it feels like it's very hard to be anti-theistic if you're like for like non-Christian religions. If you're in the United States or in Canada, uh, I feel like it's hard because the only people that are truly, I mean, back in the day at least, I feel like it's kind of changing now, but for a long time, it felt like only American conservatives would be even willing to criticize Islam or like Hinduism or other people or groups like that. While uh, if you even tried to do that in certain like progressive spaces, which are more like American based, it felt like you'd be seen as insensitive towards the cultural beliefs of people.
Yeah, it's a weird inconsistency because on one hand, like conservatives have never really had a problem with Islam because they don't know what it is. A lot of what
Mhm.
they like see a lot of the stuff far right Islamicist groups do, like conservatives would agree with. They're doing that now, you know. I mean, I remember back when the Taliban retook Afghanistan after withdrawal, and there were conservatives on Twitter who were like, well, at least they know there are only two genders. And it's like, okay, well, really, Christian conservatives and Muslim conservatives are basically hand in hand in a lot of this stuff. They literally worship the same God. Um, what a lot of conservatives are really doing is just like being mad at brown people. I think that lefties should be kind of ubiquitously critical of organized religion, but it's kind of difficult with all the like sort of cultural messaging that we've had when it comes to Islamophobia, where like you can make a statement that is definitely anti-Christian, like putting the Bible in a vat of piss, like that one artist did, and it's like, okay, that's not anti-white, that's anti-Christian. Like you'd have to be an idiot to interpret that as anti-white. But if you did the same thing with the Quran, you know, I feel like a lot of people would consider that is like anti-Muslim because it's like, ah, well, you know, the messaging gets so mixed up there.
Yeah, there's this guy who's like he was an atheist activist. He drew like a smiley and said, "This is Prophet Muhammad." He